Kubernetes med Conoa.
God dag allihopa! Nu är det fredag igen och dags för Snacka Kubernetes. I'm going to switch to English because this week we have an external guest. We have Wassim coming from GitGuardian, and today we're going to dive into how do you detect your secrets and how do you get control over them, basically. But before we kickstart this, we do this the usual way. So you put your questions in the chat, and we will get them to Wassim during his presentation. And we record this as usual. It will be posted on our usual YouTube channel to share with anyone that couldn't attend today. Also, I would like to remind everybody about the Cloud Native and Container Day this year, 21st of April. Wassim is going to be there, and I'm guessing he's going to be talking about secrets there as well. Right, Wassim?
That's for sure. Thanks, Patrick.
Cool. So with that, I'll hand it over to you. I know we have short on time, and you have a lot of stuff that you want to show. So take it away, Wassim.
Thank you, Patrick. So yes, I'm Wassim. I'm part of GitGuardian. I'm part of the solution engineering team here at the company. So we focus more on the technical aspect of the tool and how it functions. I've been with the company for a few years, and what GitGuardian is as a company is that it's a solution that helps you identify and mitigate credentials within your environments. So everything that happens to do with credentials, as in authentication keys or things that give access to systems or services. So the main functionality is for GitGuardian to provide you with visibility on whether they're exposed. And on top of that, it provides you with NHI management capabilities so that you understand where all of your NHIs sit and for you to have better management into that. Within that context, we're going to jump directly into the platform itself so that you can get some visibility with regards to the integration points and what GitGuardian has to offer. So the points of integration for GitGuardian are directly embedded within your internal development stack, so your tech stack within the company. So you have different aspects of what you can monitor for. You can monitor for things that have leaked outside of your controlled assets. You can also monitor for things that are internal to your company assets. So for example, if you have version control systems such as GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, or Azure, you also have the ability to monitor for things that are packaged and deployed. So container registries, such as, for example, Artifactory or Docker Hub. On top of that, you're not just limited to everything that happens to do with code contribution. You do also have the ability to monitor for things within collaboration tooling. So this is also something that you can integrate with. So for example, if you're using internally Confluence, or if you're using OneDrive or SharePoint, you do have the ability to integrate with those. You have messaging tooling. You can also check for messages with regards to whether or not someone accidentally exposed the credential in clear text. And you can also monitor for things within ticketing systems. So if someone is issuing a ticket, and within that ticket, they're sharing credentials within the actual value rather than referencing them to where they can be provisioned. And on top of all of this, you can also create your custom sources. So with that, you also add a bit of a layer of automation to be able to test things within, for example, deployment jobs, container registries, logs, and even file systems or machines, so that you can scan for the entirety of your environment. So what GitGuardian does is that we integrate with all of these points so that we can scan and surface credentials that have been hard-coded by developers or contributors. And the main value behind it is because credentials are rather very important exploitability for hackers, because they just give direct access to systems, and then they can move into the systems and uncover more credentials to move laterally. And with all of these, you also have the ability to integrate with different systems. So you can also plug into your secrets managers to understand where your credentials sit, whether they're properly vaulted, or if they're just out in the open without any reference to a vault. And with that, you also have the NHI governance piece, meaning that you can connect to all of the environment so that you can get a holistic view of all of your credentials. So whether it's your Kubernetes deployments, or if your pipeline jobs, or even your IAM systems, you get this integration point so that you can understand where these credentials sit, how are they managed, how long have they been provisioned, what kind of access privileges are tied to them. And you can map all of this information so that you can better understand the impact of each credential and how sensitive they are. What GitGuardian does is that we look for credentials within two categories. So as you know, there is a lot of credentials out there in the world. Most of them are tied to known providers. So if I want to reference, for example, AWS or Google, you can see the list of supported credentials by GitGuardian. So we support north of 500 types of credentials, and we can support a big range with regards to everything that has to do with API keys, username, passwords, private certificates, authentication tokens, CLI authentication, as well as, for example, if someone's using internally developed API keys. So we do have an engine that can uncover all of that. Once all of this is integrated, what you get is a holistic view of your perimeter. So this allows you to understand where everything is connected, and you can understand what's being monitored and what's being scanned. So what GitGuardian does is that it can go into the history of each of your data points. So your GitLab projects, your Bitbucket projects, your GitHub projects, even, for example, your container registry, your containers within your Artifactory or container registries. And it can scan the entirety of the layers or the commits going back to the first commit, and it can uncover this information so that you have visibility on where credentials sit and how they have been exposed. And the risk of exposed credentials, different from example, when we talk about runtime vulnerabilities, is that a credential can be exploitable at any point in time. So if by any chance someone exposes a key, it means that that key is subject to being exploited if it by any chance lands in the wrong hands. So it doesn't have to reach production for it to be a risk. It could be a risk the moment it becomes visible within a project or a repository. Once the scans are concluded, what GitGuardian does is that it provides you with a generic overview with regards to what type of credential it found, whether or not it's been referenced to a vault, as well as the information with regards to the project path, as well as the file path, and the developer that did the commit. And whenever possible, we can also let you know if these credentials are still active. So whenever possible, GitGuardian can do a validation. So it's a non-intrusive API call to the service that provisions the credential. And you can know in real time whether this credential is still active and authenticating against the service, or if it's been revoked. So you can see, for example, the valid and invalid credentials. And when we dive deep into the credential itself, you'll understand that each integration point can map the exposure of the credential and how it's used within your environment. So you can see that this credential is still valid. On top of that, it's not just valid, we can also enumerate the permissions tied to each key. So you can see whether it's an overprivileged key or if it's just a key that has read permissions or admin permissions. And you can see this information in a holistic view. So you can understand that this credential is tied to an OpenAI service, and it has these permissions that it can provide from OpenAI. And on top of that, we can also map whether or not this is part of your internal assets, so the GitLab project that we've been referencing, where it sits, within which commit exactly, as well as the file path. And whenever possible, GitGuardian has been monitoring the entirety of public GitHub for the past 7 to 8 years. And we've been scanning every single commit that happens publicly. So what we do is we create fingerprints of credentials that we find so that we can map them back to environments so that you can understand if something that is internal to your environment has been leaked publicly. So this is an asset that is not owned by your company, but rather an asset that is on a public space. And it has also referenced the same credential that you're using within your internal system. So you can understand that this internal credential has actually been exposed and leaked publicly as well. So on top of all that, you get to understand the scopes, the risk, as well as the usage of the key. And then you can understand where this key is invoked and passing throughout your environment. So you can know that this is going to be stored within these secrets managers under these types of environments. So you can see that it's referenced within an AWS secrets manager in staging, CyberArk, and HashiCorp within production. And then they're being pushed and consumed within the Kubernetes environment. So you have two types of environments that are consuming the same credential. So you have the production environment and the staging environment. And you can understand which workload is tied to it as well. So this gives you a holistic overview with regards to the credential itself, what type of permissions it has, and where it's being used within your environment, as well as whether or not there's a risk to it. So if this credential has been exposed, so they can act swiftly on it. And to be able to do that, we also provide with remediation guidelines and automations so that users can quickly do the actions that they need to do. So you can understand that you can create a pull request directly on the repo so that you can rotate the credential and reference the vault path. And when possible, you can also revoke the credential directly from GitGuardian. So if you were to invoke the revocation, that means that you will be calling the service that issues the credential and invalidating it. So this makes sure that the credential no longer authenticates with the service and eliminating the threat of it. And this information is also detailed in a sense so that people get to understand where it sits, how it looks, so within the code. And you can also understand if it's leaked publicly. So we give you the direct reference to where it sits on public code. So you can see here, for example, this is the credential on a public repo. And we automate all of this information so that the teams, so the AppSec teams or the DevOps teams or the incident response teams can have a general overview of all of the credentials that are owned by the company, and the developers can automatically get access to their contributions and code and do the required fixes when it comes to that. When we tie this information together, you'll see that we can list all of the identities. So this is jumping from the incident view of everything that has been exposed in code to a holistic inventory view. So this is where the NHI governance kicks in. And the NHI governance is your ability to enumerate all of the credentials of all of your environments and understand where they are, where they sit, what kind of permissions are tied to them, and how they're being used. So we can see, for example, this OpenAI key as well. It's a different reference, but you can see that it's a key that has been in two places exposed, and it's been resolved by the people. So they understood that the key was exposed, and then they amended the code and referenced the vault path. And you can see as well with regards to where it sits in the secrets managers. So this is where the NHI governance kicks in so that you can understand if a credential has been publicly leaked, has it been internally leaked, is it something that is used in cross environments? So this is something that is not normally recommended for you to use the same credential within, for example, staging and production. As well as if you're using the credential in multiple locations, whereas it should only be referenced in one secrets manager. In this case, it's being referenced in several. And you also have the ability to understand what is the key rotation policy in your company and whether these credentials are properly being rotated. You also have the ability to monitor for proper onboarding and offboarding of credentials tied to users. So you can see if this credential has a long-lived secret, meaning that it's been introduced within the secrets manager for over a year and hasn't been updated since, so that can provide you with visibility on that type of credential as well. And we can provide you with all of these NHI governance so you can understand that this credential is not just tied to a specific environment. It could affect multiple environments if someone wanted to do the rotation and revocation. So if someone's working within the internal code here and they updated that reference to the credential, you need to understand what is the downstream. So if they update the code, is it going to update the deployment values? Is it going to re-reference it in a different way? And then you can understand whether or not it's going to affect any of your environments. And you can see the different types of breached policies tied to each credential. So you can see if something's a reused secret, if it's a duplicate secret. And you have more control over your entire environments, as well as being able to monitor for the usage of these credentials. So what GitGuardian does is that it provides you with a way to automatically understand which credentials have been exposed, and playbooks and automations so that the effort to clean up these exposed credentials is not overwhelming to the AppSec team or the DevOps team, but rather can be disseminated to the developer community, and each developer can take action on their own code. And it can provide you with mapping so that you can understand if something is internal to your environment, as well as if something is, for example, publicly leaked. So if it's something that has been exposed publicly. So what this does is that it creates synergies for you to be able to map internal assets of the company, as well as assets that have been most likely exfiltrated or accidentally made public. So you can understand that these examples here are examples of high risk because they're not just internal to your environment anymore. They've been made public and other people might have seen them. And this is where GitGuardian also kicks in because we monitor the public space and we can let you know anytime something is publicly exposed. And that information is also enumerated within a section of GitGuardian. So this is the public secret incidents section. And what this section is that it gives you visibility on all of the credentials that we find on public GitHub that we can tie back to your company. And your company can understand that these are credentials that have been accidentally pushed to someone's personal GitHub repository, or if someone, for example, took a bunch of commits and pushed them to the wrong upstream. And you can leverage this information to be able to better handle the credential management internally at the company, and be on top of whether or not these credentials could be a risk of exploitation. Within the industry that we work, we've seen that there are a lot of companies that have been subject to these breaches. And often these breaches are just because some credential has been sitting in code for a very long time and no one paid attention to them. And the main value from GitGuardian is on top of us making sure that you can find all of these credentials and better manage them and rotate them. We also want to make sure that you can monitor all of the credentials of your environments and have better NHI management when it comes to them. So we know that when it comes to NHI governance, NHIs outnumber people 300 to 1. So each person gets to have at least 100 keys tied to them when it comes to their environments, their local development machine, their environment. And GitGuardian ties all of this information so that you have a holistic overview and understanding of everything that's monitored, all of the sources, what is being scanned, and what's being detected with regards to the credentials themselves, and as well as the ability to monitor for the actions that are being taken on the workspace. So we have the 4 pillars of what constitutes proper remediation. So we have the pillar of protection. This is where people get to understand what they've been integrating. So all of the sources that you're plugging in. You also have the detection. So this is all of the sources that you're scanning. So you can understand what has been uncovered, what type of credentials are being uncovered, where they sit within your projects, and how many projects are affected the most. And you can also understand the remediation aspect. So what are the actions that the people are taking? So the developers or the AppSec teams or the DevOps teams. What are the actions that they are taking? How is that progression over time, as well as the mean time to remediate? And the final pillar, which is the most important one, which is the prevention. So on top of us being able to provide you with visibility on where things sit, we can also provide you with tooling so that you can make sure that the issue is never a problem to begin with. So we can provide you with with aspects of prevention, where you can implement them either on the local developer machine or even within your pipeline jobs to make sure that things do not progress within the SDLC. So you can see the prevention piece is something that you can install on local developer machines, which can evaluate and scan commits before they happen or pushes before they happen. And even if it's too late and it's already been exposed in the remote repository, we can also make sure that the pipeline jobs that are scanning these merges, so if someone's creating a pull request or a merge request, that these pipeline jobs can evaluate the content of what's being merged and failing that pipeline before it reaches production. You can see the different aspects with regards to the internal, the public monitoring. So all the commits that we're scanning on public GitHub related to your company, as well as the NHI governance, so that you can understand the evolution of how you're governing your credentials internally in your company. So all the credentials that have been listed and linked to your inventory, and which ones have breached policies tied to them. And you can understand the evolution of the breach policies, which ones are the most affecting your environments, as well as, for example, if you have any reused secrets or unused secrets. So if you're provisioning keys, yet you're never referencing them or using them, these keys should be deprovisioned, as well as the integration points and the vaulting of these credentials. So the added value is that you can also understand which credentials have been vaulted by GitGuardian. So if you check the credentials that have been exposed but never vaulted, you can see that there's credentials that have never been referenced in a vault. And we can provide you with automations as well so that you can understand that this credential has never been vaulted, and yet I want a reference to a vault to each credential that I find. So you can also create automations to be able to reference which secrets manager you want to push this credential to, as well as defining the path to vault it. And this way you can have the full scope and control on all of the credentials that sit within your environment, as well as being able to properly manage them. And the last aspect of GitGuardian is the honey token piece. So this is the famous honeypot that most security practitioners tend to want to leverage. So this is your ability to be able to create real credentials. So within this example, these are AWS keys. So these are real credentials that you can disseminate and spread within your environment so that you can understand if by any chance one of your environments is compromised, this honeypot would trigger and let you know that this environment has been compromised and someone's trying to exfiltrate your keys. And this is a deployment job that you can create and you can invoke and inject into various types of projects as well as your pipelines. So if you're familiar with the recent Shai Hulud attack, what happened is that someone managed to compromise one of a public NPM package, and that created a backdoor that was scanning and pushing the credentials of local environments of developers. And this is where honey tokens kick in. So if you have honey tokens within your local developer machine environments, you can know if by any chance any developer is exposed to this risk. And on top of all of these, down the line, we're also going to be having within the NHI governance piece, the endpoint scanning. So not just scanning your environments, you can also have local developer machine scanning. So you can understand the environment variables of the developers, because the developers tend to have the keys of the kingdom. They tend to work with a lot of credentials that are overprivileged due to the fact that they're using them in staging or testing environments. And you can have an understanding of each developer machine, what it contains as credentials, and how at risk it is if by any chance it got compromised. So in short, this is a very quick overview of what GitGuardian is. There's a lot of more features with regards to how the tool automates and simplifies the aspect of detection, remediation, and collaboration. So the tool is made for enterprise customers, and it can adapt to customers so that they can make sure that the tool behaves correctly within their environments. So this is not just a UI tool, it's an API-friendly tool, meaning that every click and everything that I'm navigating through right now is available via the UI. All this information can be mirrored within your SIEMs, your SOARs, or your incident response or management tooling. You can also create what we call alerting notifications so that you can push issues into third-party systems. And you can get a general overview with regards to everything that's going on within the tooling. And I think we have 5 minutes to spare, so leave it to questions.
Yeah, thank you, Wassim. I don't see any questions yet anywhere, so please put them in if you have them. So while we're waiting for that, Wassim, when I looked at GitGuardian the first time, one of the things that stood out to me was the number of sources that you can scan. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Sure. So what GitGuardian does is that initially we were very integrated when it comes to scanning version control systems, so the code repositories of companies. But then we saw that the problem was not just limited to that environment. The problem can actually sprawl more than that environment, and we expanded a bit more than just version control systems. We needed to understand the full scope of the risk. So this is where we ventured into scanning things that are unstructured, for example, Confluence or OneDrive or SharePoint, because we understand that when someone's developing or creating, it's very common for them to mistakenly add their credentials into a private document or within a shared channel between collaborators. And that's just adding the surface of risk. And what we're doing here is that we're tying all of these environments and surfaces so that it can be re-centralized within a holistic view. And that way companies can better understand where is this credential sitting and how has it been exposed, not just one time, but several times within all of the environments, and they have better management over them.
Yeah. Thank you. No other questions. So my last comment then probably is going to be, you're going to be in Stockholm on the 21st of April, right?
Yes.
And you're going to be there the full day for anyone to grab you and ask any type of questions on site, right?
Yes, we're actually hoping for that.
Yeah. So please reach out to Wassim if you're attending the event, and he'll give you some more information that might be super interesting for your company. So with that, I gave a big thank you to you, Wassim, for attending. We're not going to be back next week. So here in Stockholm, at least, people are off for, what is it called? Sportlov. What's that in English? I don't know.
I don't know, sporting
break.
holiday.
I don't know. So I think it's going to take probably 3 or maybe even 4 weeks, Kai, before we're back. But we'll communicate through the usual channels. So you will see in the meetup group what the next subject is going to be and what it's going to be. So with that, a big thank you to Wassim. A big thank you for everyone that was attending, and please have a great Friday and a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, everyone.
Snacka Kubernetes med Conoa.